Welcome to the Replenish Earth Speaker Series, where we explore climate action through innovative and exciting speakers. Today marks the 5th day of London Climate Action Week, where we drive the national and international climate policy response, prioritizing green recovery. We'll be exploring green, fair, resilient recovery, roadmaps to COP26, sustainable and net zero London, and whole society climate mobilization. I'm Tia Kansara, and today's question for our live is, how do we create through chaos? Of course, we've had incredible amounts of chaos that we've been managing throughout the entire process of the pandemic. So my question to our audience today is, how do you keep on creating? How do you keep holding chaos and uncertainty in these times? Christine OWENELL is our speaker that's going to be joining today. She's an executive coach, teamwork facilitator, offsite wizard, purpose economist. She's a creator of Alchemy of Chaos, which is a group program experience for high-level leaders. It's a podcast and a forthcoming book. And I attended the second group, and it was incredible. Christine's work supports deep behavioral change by using business as a lens to elevate self-awareness. She helps companies like mine scale with soul by guiding visionary executives to claim leadership in new ways. She's a mentor to the Kaufman Fellows, serves as the Leadership Council of the Women Business Collaborative, and spent several years as the Global Shaper commissioned by the World Economic Forum. She specializes in wealth consciousness and coaches high net worth individuals. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you, Tia. I am so happy to be here.
Yay! In fact, it's been an absolute dream to have you on a live series or session, because every conversation that we have has got to be recorded. We just go and delve into areas and wormholes and get, brought back in through, Star Trek Discovery, Spore Drive, boom. And then all of a sudden it's, there's like 1,000 things that our conversation has led to. So yeah, welcome.
Thank you. I completely agree. Every time I have a conversation with you, I think in my mind, this is my soul food. This is my soul food. And I think that I spend half of our conversation telling you how much I'm enjoying our conversation. I love your brain. I love your brain.
So today, when we did the Alchemy of Chaos, the way that you came across it was literally because I posted something on Instagram and it was live, and I spoke about the wisdom circle, right? Like a circle of people that you can draw wisdom from and give wisdom to. And it was this sort of idea that kept on coming to me, that, having support, like this idea that it's lonely at the top, wherever the top is, but like lonely, that doesn't really sit with me, because I've just had incredible people like yourself that have either coached me or supported me or been on this journey with me. So, this idea that we're lonely doesn't really sit right. So having this circle of optimism, of support, of knowing where you are and being, in that space together with people is something that really inspires me. And then, I sent it to you on Instagram, and we hadn't been in touch for ages, but you sort of lit up and you're like, dude, do you know what I'm working on right now? And we giggled.
We giggled. I even asked you, did you mean to send this to me? Because there wasn't really context for it, yet it perfectly matched with exactly what I was creating at the time. And you were absolutely a gun of an addition. It was just so beautiful to have you as a part of it.
Thank you. One of the deeper sorts of, I suppose, questions that we've all been asking is, how do we manage this thing called chaos? Like, what exactly is chaos? In your words, and yeah, I'd love to sort of give a bit of an introduction even to the Alchemy of Chaos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my favorite way to answer this question is to tell the story about how Alchemy of Chaos came into being. So I knew that there were leaders that I was working with that were faced with they were being asked to provide answers to unanswerable questions. And they had an idea of the impossibility of the current climate, yet they were being urged to find the possibility within it. And it was really just an exercise in how do we be with the unknown meaningfully. And out of nowhere, this phrase, Alchemy of Chaos, landed in my mind. I didn't workshop it, it just landed there. And because I always love to understand the etymology of anything that I'm meaningfully creating, I looked up the definition of chaos. And the first thing is what I found. The first thing that I found was how we would normally describe chaos. So if anyone is listening live at this point in time, go ahead and type in the comments what you perceive chaos to be currently. And then I'll keep telling my story. So what I found was the modern definition of chaos: disorder and confusion. Disorder and confusion. It's 99% of the time a negative thing. It's used in negative frames, negative contexts. So I dug a little deeper and I found that the original definition of chaos that the population of people created when that word first came on the map, I should look up exactly when that was actually, but when chaos was first defined, it was said to be the nonlinear void from which all possibility arises, from the place that everything is created from. And that was such a threshold moment for me, because that really did capture the essence of what I was seeking to create from Alchemy of Chaos. And then here we were, built in to chaos. Its etymology history is that the core of it resides in possibility, that everything always comes from chaos. So that is the exercise, I think, to reframe what it means.
And to understand, you know, what does chaos mean for each and every single individual, you know, like where does chaos sit as a form in the non-linear process of life? I feel that because we've got this linearity in terms of date and time, our measurements are compared to date time. So we almost become a kind of like a linear sequential methodology to map out experiences and things according to a linear measure. But if you take that measure away, then there is non-linearity in the seasons and the way that things evolve, almost as if there is no sort of sequential, you know, things are happening in some level of growth or non-growth or just beingness, which is really fascinating.
Yes. And I would love your thoughts on this, actually, because as you're talking about this in correlation to how nature works and the linear progress that we see, but there's actually a whole non-linear ecosystem happening that makes what our perception of the linear sequence possible. And I think because we're such meaning-making machines, we look for the linearity. We look for the dots that we can connect to understand and synthesize something. But I think the truth, especially in the quantum field, as you could speak to, and I would love to hear you speak to that about this, is that there's so much happening behind the scenes that requires that we trust in the wisdom and intelligence of nature beyond which that we could understand, because we're so focused on understanding things in a linear way.
It's really interesting. I mean, parallel universes, right? Like this idea that there are multiple universes, where more recently science has introduced the concept of a multiverse, which have been written in the Vedas for thousands of years, talking about the sort of the billions of Earths all living, you know, everything all existent at the same time. And this concept of sort of like, you know, creating like burst of chaos into being, and then almost like a burst of chaos into non-being to then become. So it's like this sort of, the parallels are really fascinating. Things are happening at the same time in the potential of there being another me in the multiverse somewhere. Maybe there's thousands of me living an alternative reality. And who's to say that, you know, through the subconscious mind, we connect to these multiple parallel versions of ourselves or lives, or, you know, nature as we know it maybe doesn't behave in the manner in which we think it does, because of course our truth is only human.
Right. Our truth is only human. And I think what we can access, the knowledge that we can access, is from what we can observe. And so much of our science looks at observable realities that make sense in conjunction to one another. But yeah, there's this whole nonlinear state of chaos that's existing as an undercurrent to everything that actually is giving rise to create into reality things that aren't yet perceivable, things that don't yet make sense. Yet that's what we're built with. Like, if you look even at the truth of the quantum level of the cells that make us up, it's chaos in there. You know, like, we still haven't found a way to fully explain what's really happening and why something that's so chaotic and inexplicable to us, even given the incredible advances in science that we've made, how that core of chaos actually order is built upon it. You know, so it's a little bit of a paradox.
I wonder, you know, it's almost like awe-inspiring to recognize that we are constantly in awe of something. The first time we found out that, you know, that all matter is subject to the rules of the atom, right? Like, this is just the word that we used to describe the smallest ever known, living thing. And then we started to unpick these living things as the atoms, as smaller and smaller and smaller items that, you know, make up, you know, what is effectively the matter of the universe. And I feel that, you know, at that time, that was the best knowledge that we had. But at the time, we believed that that's all the knowledge that there was. And until it could be disproved, that was going to remain the most important piece of information on the shelf that anybody could take off and say, well, this is this is where we are on the planet. And I'm curious when it comes to holding both, right? Like, holding the truth that we know right now, or potential for investigating something that is replicable, and there's a certain amount of confidence in the rigor that we use in experimentation that comes from sort of Aristotelian visions on research, to the ability to hold that which hasn't yet presented itself, or that which hasn't yet been introduced to our humanity yet. So it's almost as if these two exist in parallel. And so we're always in the knowing and the non-knowing all at the same time.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I love Carl Jung talks about this, and he says that the height of maturity, I'm paraphrasing, but the height of maturity is the ability to hold the tension of opposites. And that's where everything is. It's in the middle of that. It's how long can we dare to stay in that liminal space to allow what's next to arise? Because so much of what we're built around, so much of our aspirations and our innovations and our technologies, we're driven to create them because they're beyond that known. They're beyond that known. But we can't get there unless we hold that tension and hold our ability to be amongst the chaos of the unknown for long enough to allow what's next to arise. And you know, I mean, what do you see in terms of, particularly seeing as this is Climate Week, the climate innovations, the technologies that are hopefully exponential in nature? How are those being innovated?
I think many of them are sort of pushed to the potential of creating something from nothing, right? Like, how might we, kind of like a very design-led question, how might we create energy that serves all without there being the sort of monopoly on the use and or ownership or reliability of it? So how do we create? And I think there are a multitude of questions. You know, some would reference large bodies that have recommended human rights. But I feel that in every culture and every country, there is a sort of like a level of maturity when it comes to the development of the ego. And I think in every country and every culture and every community and every person is that level of ego that can toggle between the self, the community, and the world, the planet that we're on. Ultimately, we're all indigenous to Earth. And yet this connection between who I am and what I'm doing can relate to that person's experience. Now, I think if we are able to take our personal experience beyond ourselves and into the communal spectrum or the planetary spectrum, we're able to see things beyond our own reality. And ultimately, that reality is subject to me. Your reality might be different to mine. And as Moran in one of our lives was describing, that the brain's reality and how we think may also be subject to any kind of hacking of the mind in terms of the power of suggestion through advertising, or what we think we know, we may not know. So don't believe everything that you think. Ultimately, hacking the brain gives us the opportunity to identify where is our perspective landing. And I think in terms of broadening that spectrum, it allows us to recognize, even in terms of climate action, where today's climate action, right, climate science or sci-fi is today's fact. Like what used to be the potential of something happening or the scenarios of the future are now actually playing out. And in this is our role to recognize where we can provide any kind of action or solution or business or product or service. And so we've sort of almost reduced our thinking and our being into self rather than communal, rather than planetary. And as a result of that individual thinking, that which we exist on our own, our reality is our own, our behavior and consequences are our own, to the extent where we're not able to extend that out to community and the planet at large. And as a result of this separation, this mindset of the dual, the binary, one doesn't, one exists without the other, the thought that humans are not part of nature is almost the real barrier through which all climate action or any relationship with the planet doesn't exist. And I think this has, the potential to bring something into awareness where we're bridging this relationship with the planet and that which exists in chaos, that which exists in its own truth. And we're trying to put our truths onto the planet. And now what we're realizing is the solutions lie with the planet and not necessarily with us. So we're learning humbly, trying to figure out what kind of actions can we really bridge this relationship with both ourselves as people, as indigenous to the planet Earth, and that which allows us to go interstellar. Ultimately, there will come a time in our lives where we will go beyond Earth, and all of us will have this opportunity to do so. We're all going to become astronauts. And the moment that we start to do that, this idea that we are from Birmingham or we are from London or any kind of local identity will then extend to communal and then planetary level. So, somebody from Mars, if there were, Martians that existed or any kind of extraterrestrials that existed, then any intelligence out in the multiverse would ask you somehow through communication. Arrival's a good move to watch for that. Where are you from? And I think that the answer to that question then relates to who we are and why we're here and what's our purpose.
Yes. I love that you just dropped Arrival, because you know what? Circling back as we do in our wormhole communication that is always so perfect and unexpected, is Arrival is all about non-linear understanding of time and communication, right? Because it's in the non-linearity that this new paradigm can emerge. Like that's what I brought from Arrival, and I see what you're saying about that identity piece. It's so important. It's so important. And here's where I think we get into some important human psychology of the understanding our relationship, again, between the relationship to and the tension between ourselves and other, which is to say the known and the unknown. So again, we're back with this paradox of how can we hold tension between the known and the unknown? And it makes sense that our proclivity is to really gravitate towards just being with what's comfortable and being with what is known, because that is safe. The unknown, I'm going to drop a Harry Potter quote because we love Harry Potter. Harry Potter. But Dumbledore says, actually, I was listening to I love listening to the audiobooks as I go to sleep. It's one of my things. And the other night I was listening, and Dumbledore said this thing: the thing that we most fear is the unknown, nothing more, nothing more. The thing that we most fear about darkness darkness, and what did he say? It was mostly darkness, and what is hidden is what is unknown. And
Right.
and it's so true. Yet there's still this paradox of we seek to create safety and stability and understanding and the known. There's so many things that we do that that skew towards us trying to create that for ourselves, which makes sense why we would reject anything that feels unknown, which is another culture or another country or another understanding of planet or something that Earth does so beautifully that we can't bring ourselves to fully grasp, but because we don't understand it. So there's this paradox that is within that relates to our ability to bridge the known and the unknown within ourselves, corresponds directly to our ability to bridge from the known to the unknown in those concentric circles of community and planetary being, Earth, understanding of Earth and natural systems. And I think that it's our willingness to do that within ourselves that corresponds directly to our ability to do that outside of ourselves, which is why it always comes back to that, you know?
There's such an interesting sort of connection point to, you know, where does my body really sort of end? Like, where do I end? Like, where can I say that I begin and end? So, you know, often in thermodynamics, we're looking at the human body, and human, you know, homeostasis, for example, is a state of being that, you know, is a steady state environment inside our bodies. So, you know, our body is always in reaction response to the environment. It does that automatically. It doesn't need any mental sort of like thought on that. Of course, you know, if you want to do certain things like, you know, keep yourself warm, then of course that is an external activity or a choice that you make. But our heat dissipates into the atmosphere around us. Our breath dissipates into, you know, the atmosphere around us. Whatever we see connects to the brain that tries to assimilate what's happening inside of us. This sort of, you know, relationship with where do I end? Well, does it end as it dissipates into the atmosphere around me, like into the space around me? Do I become my space is the question. Do I become, you know, and ultimately at the moment of departure, you know, when Tia is no more, what happens then? And I think in terms of, you know, the beauty of chaos is this, you know, this process of sitting in the eye of the storm, which is something that, you know, you often tell us about.
Yes. And here, I love this metaphor right now. This is a newer one for me that I've just really been digging into, seeing as what's happening right now, what's happening on planet Earth, what's happening particularly as an American in the US political and economic climate. And I keep thinking like we're in a storm. And then I pictured a storm, and I pictured the eye of the storm. And I started to wonder, why do we call it the eye? Why don't we call it the middle of the storm?
Right.
We call it the eye of the storm. And within the eye of the storm, there's stillness, there's clarity, there is this sense of calm, yet you are in the middle of the storm. That the fact that we call it the eye, I mean, there might be a reason for that, but what I just picked up on the metaphor and ran with is that the eye of the storm is where vision can be. And so when we are in a storm, when we are surrounded by chaos, know that somewhere within that, there is an eye of the storm. And instead of going outwards into the storm and being swirled around and knocked about, what if we could create an understanding within ourselves of what it's like to go in, to go within, to go beyond the storm, within the eye of vision, of perception, of new understanding, and see what's there for us.
That's beautiful. I think we get confused, and I love what Swarnika from the audience has shared with us, and that is that, you know, chaos for her is this indecisive state of mind or a confusion. And I feel that that very much relates to, what does it mean to be confused? And if you are sort of like bringing in the attention instead of it, as you were saying, sort of swirling around, the ability to ground on the outskirts of a storm, the potential to keep your calm is less likely than it would be at the eye, right? Like, and I'm almost like the destination is the eye, like the pinpoint is the eye. So that's the location that you want to get to. The journey is from the outside to the in. The journey is from the outside of the full force of the, of the storm to get into the center. So it's a centering process to the eye, to the location of the eye.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I think mirrored into the metaphors that we were talking about before of what it's like to interact with the environment. Where do we end and where does everything else begin? If we are the eye of what's happening around us, what can that then mean for how we understand that we are one part? We are one part, and there is so much happening around us that it's almost like, I think what I was saying earlier that I lost my train of thought about is we have this desire to create the centering, the calm, the stability of the eye. Yet we are also driven by this urge to explore and to know something that we don't know and to find out something that we're not yet aware of. So yeah, I think that recognizing that chaos exists no matter what.
I love it because I'm still thinking about the chaos being the storm, and the process is to sort of like come into the place of awareness through the eyes to be able to see. So you're going from a place of blindness and just kind of like absolute madness, confusion, to a place where you can use your eyes, and ultimately the ability to know where to look or to know where it is that you can find something, to go from the darkness to the light, to be able to see something, is the journey, right? That's the journey of the confusion to clarity.
Yes, exactly. And to create within that, to know that possibility exists there. And it's almost like if we're feeling the storm, if we're feeling the chaos, that's that indicator flag of, whoa, there's an opportunity here. There's a huge opportunity here. So instead of resisting the chaos and closing our eyes and waiting for the storm to end, that's a lost opportunity. How can we find the eye in that moment?
I love that. And I love that, this is a process of navigation. This is a process from, current reality to dream state, or, the opportunity, or wherever it is that we want to be. And I feel that, bringing it to climate action, often we are destabilized from the environment, not only because maybe we're stuck in a storm somewhere, we didn't expect that. Perhaps the volcanoes erupted in Eyjafjallajökull in Iceland, and we're like, oh bugger. Or, there is some level of natural sort of, process of viral infection that we don't quite know. Is it nature? Is it a human thing? Is it where does the division lie to be able to decide something, right? Like, whose responsibility is it? Requires so much division, right? Division of labor, division of responsibility. And it's almost as if what we're doing at the minute, especially when it comes to something so global, is we're not dividing, we're becoming. We're moving away from divisiveness, right? We're moving away from divisions of labor, and we're all working on it. Climate change and the emergencies that exist around the world are impacting all of us, but differently, right? It's like non-synchronous. It's like you're having this and you've got this part of the puzzle, and then I'm having this and I've got that part of the puzzle, and we're trying to bring different parts of a picture together when they're not the same.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. As you're speaking, it's making me think of another reflection on the truth of our interconnectedness that has come from this time period, is that there is no denying the truth of how connected we are, how integrated we are, no matter where we are on this planet, as demonstrated by the COVID-19 pandemic. There's nowhere on earth that is immune. And it's such a profound understanding of, as you were talking about the breath, as those molecules exit my lungs, they are affecting someone else, potentially on the other side of the world. Bill Bryson talks about the fact that the air that we're breathing, the air that animates our lungs, and that gives us life, there's something like it's existed, like those same molecules are being recycled, and they will have existed since the dawn of civilization, and they will continue to exist. These pieces of me that were me, that will exist until the civilization ends, and not even civilization, until the planet implodes, and probably not even then. Then it would be stardust, and it would create something else. So like, it's so true. We look back at science again to describe and explain the reality of our interconnectedness, and this experience that we're having right now as a collective, as a global society during this pandemic, is just another indicator flag that, like, wake up, y'all. Everything's connected. You cannot hide.
I think that's the thing, right? Like, the first sort of like image that I got was, I'm going to just close my eyes and hopefully it's gone. This sort of like, I'm hiding away because, this is too much for me. And it has been, like, the pandemic has been too much for me. And I share that with so many friends, family, colleagues, and people that I don't know. Like, this has been so much more than I could ever have taken on in my life. This entire, since about February onwards has been so intense. I've even found myself for an entire day not wanting to get out of bed. And I'm like, that is so not me. I would so be like, let's do this. And, the pandemic had me down for a day thinking, this is just like way too much. I don't know what to expect. And, at the beginning of the year, like the whole of last year, I spent with a very specific theme in mind, which was 50% unknown. Like, I'm going to have 50% planned. And if you know me, you know that every single minute of my day is planned. Every single year is planned. And that's not by virtue of my being a control freak, but that's by virtue of things being planned in advance. And people know that if they want me to be somewhere specifically or to do a particular project, then they need to have it in my diary. So people just tend to fit things in. My team tends to fit things into my diary. And before you know it, you already are clear on 6 months ahead, a year ahead. And so the pandemic has completely shifted that, where I have no idea what's happening tomorrow, let alone what's happening, apart from our lives. I have no idea what's going to fill in into the center and whatever else is going to come up. So sitting with that chaos is heavy. It is so heavy. And at the beginning of the year, a very dear friend of mine, Ronit, said, well, what about if instead of 50-50 planned, unplanned, what about if you were to introduce 100% unplanned? And we kind of giggled on that. And I didn't think, I took it seriously that this is a kind of like a state of being. Yes, we should try to do that. I didn't think it was going to become real, and that, literally I would not know what was going to happen a month ahead of now. So that density, right, is very much the emotional density that I've been feeling. I've been wanting to move that, mobilize that, put that to action. And that's just my constant state. Like, right, let's go, let's do this. But sitting with it was like digesting it. It was like sitting with something that I didn't like. Right? Like sitting with something that's really tough and heavy. And that's what the pandemic has been for me, a heavy experience. But holding it and recognizing and seeing it, right? Like moving from this is heavy, I don't want to see it, to, let's bring it into view. Has been that process of, appreciating what this moment is asking of me. And, we've all got our own perspectives on the pandemic. And, in this process of holding this, in whatever it wants to become, is like the creation of not knowing what the baby's going to look like. I know I'm birthing something. I know through this process something is moving in me. I just don't know what it is at the moment. And that for me is this incredible process from absolute chaos and like madness, and I don't want to move and I don't want to get out of bed, which is very rare for me, to, let's be with this. So this this time is calling us to action. And for me, this action is to hold this, whatever it wants to become. And in that uncertainty is some level of questions or perhaps some curiosity that's emerging.
Yes. Ah, so beautifully said. So beautifully said. That for me, the magic and vibrancy and possibility of creation happens when we are available to be surprised and delighted. And if we are truly surprised and delighted, that means we don't already know the outcome. You know?
Yeah.
And that's
Wow.
where this motion, that's when it becomes so important. And you said, you know, I instead of having it back here, I brought it here. You said that in one sentence, but this is actually where all the juice is. Bringing it from behind my head where I'm not seeing it to in front of my vision to look at it. Easier said than done, right? That I think is that you were talking about the bridge. That's one of the bridges that I think is just so important for each individual to take on. What am I pretending not to know? What am I choosing to not see about myself, about the planet burning and melting, about our relationships, about our political division, whatever it is, bringing it here is a Herculean effort. So I guess I'm wondering, what did it take for you, or what did it look like for you to move from here to here?
I think it was also because, you know, much of what's been going on, I have not expected. Like, you know, things that were unplanned, right? So I'm okay with the entirety of my calendar, you know, basically just being crossed off. And it's almost like, you know, those kiddies games where you scribble something and then you just like wipe it clean. That's what happened. It's just like wipe clean. Brilliant. Great. Okay. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. And that was almost the easy bit. It was the, you know, the incoming, like within 2 days or 2 hours, and this is expected, this is going to happen. And it was sort of like not knowing where, okay, so now I need to process the unknown, but I don't know what it is that I'm processing. So I brought the unknown into visibility, and that visibility is giving me some, you know, at least an opportunity to be seen, right, by this, just as much as I'm looking at it. It's sort of like the, you know, when a particle is seen, it behaves differently. When you're under observation, you behave differently. And so it was almost like this, I am behaving differently with this context of not knowing. And it asked me to trust it.
Yes.
So, like, you know, many a time when where, you know, there's a part and there's an element of us, so there's a person inside us, right? There's the Tia, there's the Harsha, there's the, you know, the doctor and the student and the child and all of these other perspectives of me living, all these like mini me's living inside me, different perspectives and archetypes. And there are moments where they want to be seen, right? I'm almost like multiple profiles of who I am. Like I'm a different person to, you know, maybe my cat than I would be to, you know, a rat that runs across the street. Like I'm just like, well, you know, more loving and maybe not so loving. So it's interesting that in all of these profiles is an opportunity for me to recognize what needs to be said and what needs to be heard. And sometimes even in the sort of like the work of the saboteur, that sort of emerges as a pain or an alarm. And it's like, it's calling for your attention. You're like, well, hold on a second. You know, I've got other things going on, go away. And then there comes a moment where it just comes front and center and it's like headlights are on and it's like, whoa, okay, hi. What do I do with this? And that's when, you know, that's where the real work comes in, because all of a sudden you've been taught about like fight and flight and frozen and feel. And it's like, okay, babes, we got to feel this. Let's feel this, right? You want me to see you? You want me to understand? Okay, fine. So I am going to, you know, put away my arrogance and my intellectual arrogance and I know what's going on arrogance, and I'm going to move that aside to be like, right, I don't know.
I love that you brought that back to trust and not knowing. And it's so beautiful the way that you described the inner the inner yous, because we all have those. We all have these inner us's that are these archetypal personalities that are so often vying for expression, like vying for our attention, and can be in conflict because of that. But something that came up for me when you were talking about that is going back to nature and the intelligence of trusting that something miraculous can happen if we just trust that it will. Like the whole thing about the entire oak tree exists within the acorn.
Beautiful.
And we can't understand how that truly is, but you plant an acorn and you trust, and you put the acorn into the darkness, cover it in soil, and surround it by the depth of the darkness. Really, that is the metaphor. And then the oak tree happens, and I think that works the same way with us, that if we will be willing to cover ourselves within the eye of the storm, cover ourselves in that darkness, be available to be astonished within that is when we can rise up from that soil, from the fertile soil of the unknowing, the fertile soil of the chaos, the fertile soil of the confusion, being willing to just say, you know what, I don't know, and see what can be created from that state. I just think that is for me the charge of the human existence right now. And of course that corresponds to our work within the context of the planet, and cultivating an awareness of that enough so that we can live in a thriving coexistence with the planet rather than in conflict. We're missing something, and it all ties back to our ability to do just that, to trust in the unknown.
That's the I think the definition for me of conflict, right? Like, what is conflict? When two parts of you, 3 parts, 4 parts, 5 parts of you have just got different voices, and they've got different voices, and they have different truths. So just as much as we have conflict outdoors with, various countries sort of like, deciding on diplomatic, geopolitics, whatever, we've got that sort of geopolitical situation indoors, right? Where each of our profiles that have or have not received, the attention through the archetypal maturing, right? Like, I'm going with the archetypes of is it Clarissa Estolas, or Women Who Run with the Wolves? It's such a fascinating book.
Yes.
Pinkolas Estes, I think her name is, but it's really fascinating that each personality that we come across is like an archetype. They fall into these sort of archetypal figures, and that there is this pro and con of each of them. It's almost like there's a charge that is either negative or positive on each of these archetypes, and depending on our own maturity in that realm, whether it is like the leadership archetype, or it's the mother archetype, or all of these different kinds of roles that we play, and each one has got its own identity. And that identity is met with whether we have that maturing of the ego within the shape of that archetype or not. So when we often come across the same archetype in another person that is represented in a person, and it is either negatively or positively charged, we will respond and react according to our own understanding of that. So often when we meet somebody like another mother, but she's doing something and really great at us, it's often because our own version of that archetype is unnurtured.
Yes. And it's becoming aware of who we have to become in order to meet ourselves. And as we just had a comment come in, this is just so true. Go within or go without. Yes, exactly. If we are not willing to go within, then we're missing the point. Truly. And we're missing the context that we need to understand ourselves within the truths of our interrelationship with other, and with planet, and with climate, and with nature. it all starts with our ability to go there ourselves, because that is where we pave the road of skills. Like it's like going to the soul gym, like lifting the weights. We pave that road to our understanding of what that requires of us to show up in that way. The more that we can do that for and within ourselves, the more that we can do that for the planet and others.
So what is the key right now? Like, what is the, where do we unlock this in ourselves? Because, the challenge, I think, for myself is, intellectually I get it, but somatically I don't.
Yes.
Intellectually I get it, but emotionally I don't, right? It's like a lived experience that is yet to happen, because perhaps I'm seeing it as the other. So what's the key for me to sort of bring it and merge it in and like kind of let it sit, apart from sort of observing that it's happening?
Yes. The key right now. Okay, I'm going to ask you to ask this question for me again within a more specific context, because I think I know what you're getting at.
Yeah. I mean, when I hear what you're saying, I understand, but I can't feel it.
Yes.
So the tough aspect of that is, let's say I'm in chaos right now, and many of us are, and we're in this storm bit. We're like whizzing around, and like to even think of getting to the eye, we don't even know that there is an eye. And now, like, to even jump into the eye to do that bit of creative work is like so far a reality, because we're whizzing around at 100 miles per hour. And so in that whizzing state, how do we get to stillness? What door do we open to sort of walk through that?
Yes.
In here.
Oh, yes. Yes. Now I know what you're getting at. Okay. I think that the key right now is, first of all, to commit to not reject reality.
Oof.
To commit to be with exactly what is, even if, and especially if that is not knowing, which it is for so many people around the earth right now. That is definitely something that we can all agree on right now, is that we do not know. And so the key is to meaningfully navigate the not knowing and see it as a way to come alive within ourselves in new ways, to see it as a way to bring into focus parts of ourselves that have remained dormant in our comfort of stability, to see it as this launch pad for what's next, for the possibility that we can create. If I can meaningfully navigate the unknowing as a charge to myself to be with the texture, to be with the delight of realizing that I don't know everything, and to see it as a delight instead of a detriment. That, I think, no matter what the situation is, I think that we can all find a kernel of activation within that we can contribute a new kind of thinking, a new kind of creation, a new self that will enrich the world around us as a result.
What I've often learned is to take the negative charge out. The way that I'm seeing it is to sort of if it's dense, to take the density and feel what density feels like, and to sort of allow it the space and hold it and allow it to sort of dissipate the way that it wants to. It's almost like digesting food, like digesting an emotion or a feeling or that process. And it's obviously showing me something that I'm not aware of. So recognizing what it is that it's showing me allows me to sort of, become one with it almost. And I think that process of creativity in that space is continuing to go through all of the motions and moving that through and digesting all of that whilst expressing. It's like when anybody asks me the question, like, what does success look like for you? For me, it's at 100% creativity. I want to be 100% the creative potential that I can be. I don't know, Because like that's the sort of the juicy bit of life, is to create something and to live in that, live in the creation and understand the creation process.
Yes. Yeah. And I would even say, well said, I would even say, instead of thinking about it like taking out the negative charge, I one time saw a meme that showed a magnet, and it's like, magnets don't work with only positive ends, with
Right.
only positive charges. And it's so true, because we're not, what we're talking about right now is not positivity rainbow washing these things. It's not bypassing the truth of this, because the truth of this is that it's dense. The truth of this is that it's adversely affecting millions, if not billions of people right now. So I think that I would have a slight reframe. Instead of taking out the negative charge, it's be with the negative charge. Understand how it connects to the other end of the charge of ourselves, and invite that fullness. And that's what you were saying, that's what I got from you, is that when you digest something that is previously undigestible, we become more full, we become more whole, we become more of ourselves. And it's not easy. It's hard work to be with that which we might fear, or be with that which feels daunting and unknown. But it is so worth it, because of that result of being in the fullness, more of the fullness of who we are and who we're here to be.
Totally. I'm so grateful for your time, Christine. And I think that, having this chance to talk about chaos and the alchemy of chaos and the process of moving from the outer edges of the storm or the confusion to that relationship that we can create with clarity and the eye and the seeing of, like almost as if we're turning our sights, into a very different relationship. Of course, we have the eyes looking out, the inner eyes looking in, but it's as if it's not about the eyes looking in or out. It's just perception expanding. And I think when we expand our capability to understand and see almost like a 360 version of events, we're allowing for those parts that don't want to be seen, or the negatives that don't want to be felt, to also be encouraged. It's almost as if our compassion expands. It's like where, our capability to love expands, goes beyond the conditions of I only want it to be nice and I only want it to be something that I know.
Yes. And one more note on the fact that you just used the word compassion, and I just can't ignore the beautiful synchronicity. Compassion means, back to etymology, to be with suffering.
Ooh, wow.
Is to be with suffering. And that is exactly what we're talking about. That is the gateway to expansion.
Gosh, that's incredible. Kind of brings me back to a lot of the works of Lord Buddha, and the sort of sitting with the suffering, kind of like the Vipassana, sitting for 10 days to get through and overcome this relationship that we've created with pain and suffering, and that somewhere, somehow, is always the sensations that we can become equanimous to. And it's that equanimity in face of positive, negative charge that allows us to expand beyond what we know to that which we don't.
Exactly. And to do that within ourselves, within the undigestible parts of ourselves, then allows us to be with that suffering of our fellow humans in the collective that will rise into what's next in your paradigm.
Yeah, who knows what we're going to do and where we're going to be. But in this process of not knowing is this process of becoming. And I think that step of, wanting to know or wanting to control or wanting to have like some level of ownership over something, even if it is your time and the things that are happening around you, it is in letting it free. Right? Let that freedom, the freedom of time, the freedom of trust, the freedom of love. And I feel that those kinds of conditions that we may have constructed before the pandemic may not be what the time is calling us to action.
Yes. Yes. And I think that the question that I would ask you, if you're viewing this right now, the question I have for you is, if you knew that not knowing meaningfully not knowing is one of the keys to thriving right now. How much can you dare to not know about your world and your life during this time?
That's a brilliant question. How much can you dare not to know?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good dare, Christine. I think that's a really good dare. I think that's a really good one to leave our audience with. The opportunity to, appreciate your work and also Alchemy of Chaos and the beautiful impact that you've had on so many people. It's really delightful to have you on Replenish Earth, and the way that people can get in contact with you. We do have your website that we've shared. And we've also got your coaching website where people can find out about the kinds of coaching that you do. But also we'd like to share, is this your Twitter handle?
It is, although I don't think I've posted anything in about 5 years. But yes, that's my Twitter handle.
Or is it the same for Instagram? Or is there another way that...
It's just my name on Instagram, Christine OWENELL.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Tia, for having me. As usual, our conversation today just lit me up from the inside out. Every single one of my cells is just like, yes, this is what we're here for. So thank you for having me. Thank you for your beautiful work in the world. And I'm just so grateful that you exist.
Thank you, Christine. And yeah, brilliant. And obviously, anytime, there is a question that you've got when it comes to the chaos that life can bring, please do reach out to Christine. She's just been an incredible rock during these times of, almost like 100 miles per hour, 1,000 miles per hour speeds that we're traveling at. Sometimes having that point of reference is really quite helpful. So yeah, please do reach out to Christine. And Christine, thank you so much for joining us on Replenish Earth Live.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just going to add a few more notes that Replenish Earth starts really with the smallest of actions. You can become a replenisher too. Participate in today's Rise to Replenish challenge so that we can really push this momentum of replenishing Earth by 2030. Today's theme is finding the alternatives, where I pledge to replacing and reducing the use of products that have a negative impact on the environment. Please join us and engage with our social media handles to know more about how you can win prizes, how you can join our VIP Eco Party, and otherwise see you very soon for the Now panel live with Replenish Earth. Thank you all very much for your time.